So we are excited to bring up Cherie now. She is coming to us. She's got a whole new setup. Are you
I'm
ready?
back. Can you
She
hear
is.
me?
Yes. All right.
Yay!
Cherie is here to talk to us about growing into her career. Take it away.
Thank you, Megan. I guess this year it's about pivoting, right? And so that's what we did. I'm back and now I have sound so you guys can all hear me. So it was the summer of 1987, and I was the third grader at Monte Vista Elementary School in Phoenix, Arizona. I had been competing in beauty pageants and talent competitions that my mother, Sharon, had entered me in. At one of the beauty pageants, we were approached by a scout for a local agency at the time called Plaza 3. They eventually signed me and quickly had a booking for me for the back to school shoot for the Spiegel catalog. At the time, I would have equated it to the Sears catalog. I was to meet at North High School and shoot with the crew from Chicago. Since we were shooting for fall, I was put into a down coat, sweater, hat, mittens, gloves, the whole world. And needless to say, it was 110 degrees that day. But hey, I was making 50 bucks an hour and I was 9 years old. A few months later, the catalog came in the mail, and much to my success, I had made the cover. This, of course, fueled my mother's belief that I had something special, and we proceeded on the weekends with the beauty pageants. A few years passed, and by this time, I was 12 years old with a mouthful of braces and 5'10". In middle school, they were calling me Cherie the Tree. I ended up winning the talent portion of one of the competitions for my tap dancing routine, and part of the prize was a meeting with the infamous Robert Black of the coveted Robert Black Agency. We were so excited. My mom and I met with him in the Tempe office, and during that interview, he asked me, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And I looked right at him and I said, "I want to own a modeling agency." And he perked right up and said, "Wow, this is a girl who really knows what she wants." He offered me a contract that day. And from then on, throughout high school, I did Dillard's print ads for the newspapers, lots of bridal shows, and many hair advertisements. In the summer of 1996, at 18 years old, I was offered an 8-week contract to model in Milan, Italy. I was going to be international. After 12 hours of traveling, I arrived at the agency in Milan and was immediately whisked away to have my measurements taken in the bathroom by two of the bookers who, for the very little Italian that I could understand, didn't like what the tape measure was reading. Mind you, I probably weighed 115 pounds. During the time in Milan, I lived in the model apartment from girls from all over the world. I would equate the model housing to basically a college dorm, very little space or privacy. I found myself during this time going through the models' portfolios, trying to understand why they were booking the jobs that they were and understand the money that they were making. In the back of my mind, I knew that this industry was going to be my career, but I wasn't sure it was going to be as a model. I was somebody who thrived off of structure and security. And what I learned that summer as a model, you never know when you're working. You never know how much money you're going to be making. And the uncertainty was just too much for me. I returned home that fall and enrolled in college at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff, which was quite perplexing to many because 25 years ago, NAU was very small and definitely didn't seem progressive enough for a girl who had just returned modeling in Milan. To be honest, at the time, it was the only state school that offered a fashion program. Prior to my senior year, my guidance counselor told me that I needed an internship to graduate. So I called up Robert Black and asked him if he would allow me to be the summer intern. He was thrilled to have me, but told me I would have to come off the roster as the model, so there was no conflict of interest. This was totally fine by me because by then I was much more fascinated with the business side of the industry than I was as a model. I spent that summer in the agency learning the lingo, listening to the agents speak, trying to understand why some of the models were booked for projects and not others, basically soaking up everything I could. I was officially on the other side. Upon college graduation, I was determined to leave Arizona and work at a modeling agency. I sent out about 50 paper resumes via snail mail to agencies in LA, San Francisco, Miami, New York, and Chicago. My resume was pretty niche: model, summer intern, college graduate. I started a long road into what was a master's degree in the industry when an agency in San Francisco hired me. I was 22 years old, making $25,000 a year, living in the most expensive city at the time in the US, and definitely hustling. It was the height of the dot-com and money was flowing freely. I remember quoting a job for one of the first jobs I got to work on, and I asked for $4,000 for the day for the girl. I was probably about $2,000 over on standard rates, but somehow I got the client to agree, and I sure caught my boss's attention to sticking to my guns. Eventually, after a few years, I became the director of the division, and I found my groove. By then, I was billing 6 figures a month in income and was the youngest one in the office. After 5 years in San Francisco, it was time to head back to Arizona. My mom had taken ill, and I wanted to be with her. I was on a visit in a home, on a visit home before relocating. I told her I was having breakfast with Robert Black, who by that time had become my mentor in the industry. I was trying to figure out how I was going to stay in the fashion industry, but move back home to a market with less opportunities. Of course, working for Robert had crossed my mind, but to be honest, I wanted more than just to be an agent. I left that morning and I told my mom, I'm going to ask Robert if he'd sell his agency to me. She looked at me as if I was crazy. I still remember that day, pulling out of my childhood home, knowing today that that was the day that set it all in motion. Much to my surprise, Robert said yes that morning on that very fateful day at breakfast at the Quilted Bear in Scottsdale. I was 26 years old. I had no money, no assets, and nothing to lose. I set foot back in the Ford Robert Black agency in September of 2004 as the agency director. The intent was for me to spend the next 6 months meeting all of the models, the photographers, the clients, and start to build a rapport with all of those that I was going to be working so closely with. In the beginning, there were so many tears, mostly because I was trying to earn the respect of all of these people. I was the youngest one in the office again and trying to fill Robert's shoes. And I'm sure most were thinking, who the hell's this kid? No one knew I was buying the agency, but the local market was quickly changing, and those first 6 months were up. My ailing mother took out a second mortgage on her home and for my down payment to Robert, and our deal became official in March of 2005. I had never read a profit and loss statement, never hired and fired anyone, and definitely didn't go to business school. My 12-year-old dream to own a modeling agency had now come true at such a young age, and I was on my way. 5 years after I bought the agency, my mom passed away, and it was a very trying time for me to continue to get up and lead my company. My biggest cheerleader was gone, but what I learned is that people don't just end up at the top. You have to keep getting up each and every day and going after and working hard for what you want. The last 15 years as a business owner has truly shaped who I am today. Now, with over 350 models and talent on our roster, working in every major market, I've learned to trust my gut and pull the triggers when I felt like it was right. I've also never wavered on my integrity, even in the toughest of situations. In the beginning, I was so personally invested in every model that we signed and every booking that came in the door, much to a detriment. If a model would leave us for another agency, I would feel as though I was being betrayed by my own child. Today, I've learned how to keep a safe distance while also providing a very personal touch. Now, I walk into my office and see young girls sitting in the lobby with their mothers, portfolios in their laps, and waiting for their name to be called. And I realize I've come full circle. 30 years ago, I was that tall, lanky girl with my mother, wondering what was next for me. Thank you for allowing me to share my story.